Commentary by Sarah Hawkey. Midnight ISO.
Hello and welcome to the Nighthawk Racing F1 RST Season 3 Round 9 Purple Lobby. This week at the legendary Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. Firstly, I'm Midnight, and you can see myself and all of our other drivers in the purple lobby, also the red and blue lobbies, as well as our back catalogue of events and highly competitive races here on the Nighthawk Racing YouTube channel. Please also check out our Instagram, TikTok for other content and races too. But now it's time to focus on the event at hand, our purple hybrid lobby. It is my pleasure to introduce one of our group co-founders and our very own Sarah Hawkey, here tonight for Round 9's commentary and analysis.
Hello, and thank you very much for that introduction. Couldn't have said it better myself. And looking forward to the Nurburgring. It always is a good round for action and potentially some weather.
We shall see what happens, but it is one that we've been to before, so most of our drivers will remember it, and it's a very popular circuit regardless. So, popular destination, I hope it's going to give us a good race tonight. But with that in mind, let's go and have a look at the details for the series. So, we have a 10 race championship calendar, usually divided up into red and blue lobbies, but tonight we're in a mixed purple lobby. Hopefully you see what we did there. But I'm going to ask you, Sarah, for some more details on the event at hand tonight, if you please.
Of course I can. So, up first, and as always, is the sprint race, which is reverse average points scored. So obviously the drivers with slightly lower average points start at the front, where the drivers who have scored a lot of points then start at the back, and they've got a little bit of a challenge on their hands. But around the Nurburgring, it's going to be 9 laps and about 70% fuel. So some cars, will be cutting it a little bit fine on the fuel, especially the gas guzzling cars. But it will be a rolling start and open tyre choices. And then once the sprint race is all done and dusted, the drivers get a little break before we go into the qualifying session, which is 10 minutes long. And the fuel use is at about 50%. And the tyres that drivers qualify on is then what they have to start the feature race on. So, a lot of drivers will probably go for that soft tyre to get a little bit in front of other drivers and have a good qualifying time. Unless it's obviously wet, then that rule goes completely out of the window. And after the qualifying session, we then go straight into the feature race, which around the Nurburgring is going to be 33 laps long. It'll be a grid start, and like I said, I've heard a little birdie say that we're going to expect to have some, tricky weather conditions today. Well,
in that region of Germany, it is well known for it, so yeah, it's going to be one of those tricky races, I feel. But without further ado, I'm going to check out the points, because the drivers are going to be focusing not on the weather, well, at least not to start with, but they're going to be thinking about the points. So, sprint race starts at 22 points for the win, 20 points for second, 18 for third, and then all the way down to 1 point for 16th, with a little bonus point for the fastest lap, but you must be in the top 10 to receive it. The feature race is somewhat similar. It's 45 points for a win, 40 points rather for second, and 35 points for third, and then all the way down to 3 points for 16th, with an extra 2 bonus points for the fastest lap. There is also, for qualifying, 3 points for the pole, 2 for second, and 1 for third. So lots to fight for and lots to think about strategically. And like Sarah said, with the weather possibly playing havoc with the feature race, and we're going to see perhaps some mixed strategy with people choosing the tyres accordingly. So with that in mind, we know what the track's like, but Sarah, can we have a bit more details on the track itself, please?
Yeah, of course you can. And as Midnight said, tonight we are racing at the legendary Nurburgring, and we're going to use the Grand Prix layout, which is around 5.1 kilometres or 3.2 miles long. It has about 15 turns in total, but let's delve a little bit more into the history of this iconic track. So, the Nurburgring was opened on the 18th of June 1927, and it is located within Nurburg in Germany. The Grand Prix track layout itself was completed in 1984, so obviously a little bit of time before the Grand Prix layout was used, and it was built to meet the highest safety standards. Obviously, however, it's considered in character a mere shadow of its older sibling, and I think we all know about that. But besides obviously some major international events which are held at the Nurburgring, there was a brief return of Formula One as the 1984 European Grand Prix was held at the track, followed by the 1985 German Grand Prix. And again, following the success of this, the first World Championship of Michael Schumacher, a second German F1 race, was held at the Nurburgring between 1995 and 2006, called the European Grand Prix this time. And or in 1997 and 1998, it then had another name change, and it was called the Luxembourg Grand Prix. So as you can see, it's had numerous name changes, and it was then in 2020 called the Eiffel Grand Prix, and it was won by Lewis Hamilton, who on that day equalled Michael Schumacher's record of wins. And then obviously a little bit of kind of knowledge about the track. The Audi S, which is turns 8 and 9, was renamed Michael Schumacher S's after, the very famous Michael Schumacher. And but I don't know about you in Midnight, but I think we could talk about this track all day and its different variations. Our personal favourite, the Nordschleife. But what are your thoughts on the track?
Personally, the Grand Prix track I absolutely adore. It's something that says a lot of very unique corners. I mean, you've just got to think about that turn 1, turn 2 sort of complex. Downhill, tight right-handed, and opens up, and it's always one of those first corner potential hazards. But if you get it right, it feels absolutely amazing. The rest of the track itself, a lot of people, as you quite rightly said, say it pales into almost insignificance compared to the Nordschleife, but to me it is a better track for racing. The Nordschleife is something else, and I think we'll leave that track as it is because we're going to focus on the Grand Prix, because to me, I think it is a really decent track. You got a lot of history there on that exact track and the local area, and like you said, it's come under so many different names, from the European to the German to the Luxembourg, the Eiffel Grand Prix, so it's well travelled and respected, and I think it's a shame it's not on any modern F1 calendar, but it is on ours tonight, and I think it is time we go and see what our drivers got up to and have fun with the sprint race in our purple lobby.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Let's go see how all the drivers gone.
Okay, before we get going with the sprint race, we're going to check out the grid. So, Piper, not in that Viper, so we can't say that anymore, but Piper in the M6 in that wonderful red and blue livery is taking pole position today and will lead the field down the main straight and into turn 1. Up next is Steven in the little Yeetle Beetle, and he's had a few good races this season, particularly in the sprint, so he's going to want to get a good result here, as it's been a couple of races since he's seen the podium. Up next, P3, we have Saber Venom, otherwise known as Hassler, in that 911. Very much a home race for the Porsche, so he's going to be wanting to do it some honour and get a good result for it. Up next is our very own admin of the crazy Bertie. And in that Aston Martin, he has struggled this season, but it is very much down to the car, we believe. And although he has been nice and consistent, he's been unfortunately lacking a bit of performance with that car, but he's going to want to see a good result here, particularly in the sprint, or at the very least in the feature later on. Good luck to you, Bertie. And next we have in the AMG a lost Deadline. It's good to see him back on the grid. One of our former United boys, teammate with our very own other admin of McManley, but racing here on his own today and looking for a good result during this season. And up next, one of our co-creators, Sarah Hawkey herself, in that McLaren 650S. Going to be hoping to impress here today. And over to Sarah for the rest of the grid.
Thank you very much. And starting in P7, we then have a dive bombing Koulios. At least I'll say about that the best. But Koulios obviously got a P3 in the sprint race around Saint Croix. So he's got a little bit of a challenge on his hands if he wants to try and replicate that this week. But obviously, good luck, and let's dive bombing, please. So just starting just behind Koulios, we then have Sophie, and in that Ferrari 458, and I've got to say, it's always been one of my favourite liveries. It's just gorgeous, and that sparkling paint just kind of hits the right spot. But yeah, Sophie's been doing really well in the last couple of rounds. Obviously, it's a kind of a difficult car to drive, but when you're feeling, that it's going in your favour, then there's kind of no stopping that Ferrari. So good luck to Sophie. Just starting just behind, we then have Kirk in that BMW. And Kirk, after last week at St. Croix, had a very, very good showing. He came with a sprint race win, also a P3 in our purple lobby feature race. So he's kind of been on top form at the minute. So again, I'm sure he'll be trying to replicate that again today. In P10, we have our other co-founder of the Nighthawk Racing Group in Midnight ISO in that McLaren 650S. Starting P10, so he's got a little bit of kind of a challenge on his hands if he wants to get any kind of further forwards. Kind of surrounded by very fast drivers around him, but good luck nevertheless. In P11, we then have one of our own admin in Pedro in that Mercedes. And again, Pedro's in kind of that fighting position for the championship, so he's going to try I'm sure he's going to try his utmost to try and get on that podium, if not pick up a win. Then starting just behind Pedro, we have our other championship contender in Katie the Kai. So it's going to be a tough battle between Pedro and Katie the Kai within this race. They're trying to kind of secure that championship win. Obviously, we've got 2 rounds left, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And in P13 and rounding off the sprint race grid, we then have Joker in the other Ferrari 458. And we all know he's one for unique strategy calls, so I'm excited to see what he does in the feature. But in the sprint, nevertheless, I'm sure he'll be trying his best to try and worm his way through the grid and get in or around the podium. But that rounds off our grid for the Nurburgring sprint race.
And what a grid it is. It's a lot of drivers in there are going to be wanting really good results, and a lot of drivers are definitely capable of it as well. But yeah, without further ado, Sarah, I'm excited for this one. Let's crack on.
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go for round 9 purple lobby sprint race here at the Nurburgring. Piper is going to lead us away, followed by Stephen, Hassler and Bertie in the top 4. Let's hope all the cars can get through the first corner, which is a very, very tricky one here at the Nurburgring. But Piper leads away, followed by Stephen, followed by Hassler. Bertie in P4 still, taking single file. So far, so good. But, oh, maybe not. That's timing.
Yeah, perfect timing there, Midnight. It looks like Deadline accidentally missed his braking point or forgot, how tight turn 1 is, and it looks like he kind of just may have used Stephen as his braking board there. So very unfortunate for the two. Obviously drops on all the way back to the back of the grid, but they've both got going again. But yeah, an unusual mistake by Deadline, but maybe he's not been driving this track a lot.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think he was at the Nordschleife there when everyone else was going in the Grand Prix circuit. But at least the rest of the field have gotten through. And there's been some movers so far. Well, at least a few little taps here and there as Kirk gets the back of Joker there. And Pedro is forced out a little bit wide. But so far, we do have Hassler up to P1. Piper, and Hassler goes wide into the hairpin. So Piper takes P1 back. Koulias move far up the grid into P2. Bertie P3, Hassler down to P4, and yeah, so far so good for the rest of the field.
Yeah, it seems like everyone, apart from obviously Deadline, did get a nice clean getaway for those first couple of corners, and we all know how kind of difficult this first lap is. Everyone wants to kind of secure a good position and try and get as far away from their competitors as possible. As we see Kirk doing a very brave move on the outside there, catching Pedro by surprise, I would say. But further up, we got most of the grid going into this chicane here, which is very tight, 2x2, so very brave. Usually everyone would get single file at that point and get ready to go through the chicane, but not these drivers. They like to go side by side through that section there.
I have to say, Koulias made a great move up to P1, but he's spun coming out the final corner, and unfortunately, yes, that is Koulias right down the back of the grid again. Piper regains P1. Koulias having a spin. Now it's down to third to last. So Bertie up to P2, Hassler up to P3, and there's a big gaggle of cars coming into the first corner.
Yeah, and it just looked like Katie the car managed to get it stopped there and prevented his car from going in the side of Midnight's car. But yeah, Piper still in the lead for now. He's managed to get very, relatively unscathed in his first couple of laps. So well done, Piper. But yeah, obviously I'm very unfortunate for Koulias there. It looked like he put just a little bit too much power coming out of that final corner, which just made that BRZ spin, and we all know how easy it is to spin that car.
Yeah, and that BRZ does love to be a bit tail happy. Sophie up to P4 with a great move into the left-hander there. Whereas Kai now looks like he's trying to seize upon P5 as well. So up the front, Piper taking the lead into the hairpin.
Oh.
Spoke too soon.
Again, perfect timing there. It just looked like Bertie accidentally, hit Piper up the back, and it just, made him go in the sand. But Bertie waiting for him to rejoin, which is good sportsmanship. So well done to Bertie and Piper for sorting that situation out. But that has promoted Midnight into P1, and I'm sure he'll be very happy about that. But it looks like behind him he's got Sophie and Haslett and Katie Dekai, so he can't, calm down or, drop any concentration just yet.
Yeah, and Joker up to P5, passing Sarah Hawkey on after the back section there, and Kirk in P7 moving up the grid, followed by Pedro and Piper down to P9 after that incident between him and Bertie. But yes, great to see some sporting behaviour between him and Bertie pulling over as Kai finally gets up to P3 on those medium tyres, past Haslett through the chicane, and now sets about for P2.
Yeah, no, just on board with Katie Dekai there. Looked like a very good move, he knew that Haslett was going to maybe go potentially a little bit wide coming out the chicane, and he kind of placed that Corvette right at, in the inside line, which made him, put the acceleration down just that little bit early and get the move done on Haslett pretty much straight away after that chicane. But just behind we have Joker on the back of Haslett. So Joker, a silent assassin so far. He started right down at the kind of the back end of the grid, and he's managed to get himself up to P5 so far.
Yeah, that's the key with these sprint races. You have to make use of every opportunity whilst trying to get to the end. I mean, first to win, first to get the good points, you have to finish. So Joker making absolutely good use of every inch of the track so far. And Katie Dekai has to be said to be doing exactly the same, up to P3 from the very back row. So far, the race is starting to settle down now here on lap 3. Getting a little bit more spaced out. We can see drivers like Joker, who is eyeing up P4. Kirk is up to P6, who's got past Sarah, and who's eyeing up that P5. So that is always the key with this. If you can go forward, so can the people behind you. So you have to watch out going forward as well as from behind you. As Deadline looks like he's getting past Bertie, and Koulias is getting past Piper, all in the same part of the track.
Yeah, it's not easy to pass around here. So going side by side through this SSC, well, 3 wide actually, with Piper, Deadline, and Koulias. Not many moves can be done there, but it looks like they've kind of all worked themselves out. But Koulias looks like he wants to try and overtake these two in front as quick as he can, as it looks like Deadline forces Piper out of the track a little bit there, unfortunately slowing down Piper. But Koulias still on the charge here between Deadline and Bertie. Bertie having to spend a little bit of a penalty there, but didn't lose him too much time. But they all go through the chicane here, and it looks like Bertie's going to stay ahead for now. But yeah, like you say, obviously all of them mostly getting away nice and clean. Although
might have moved for P4 coming down to turn 1, Sarah.
I just spotted that at the same time you were. I was keeping an eye on this. I was thinking, 3 wide into turn 1 doesn't always go very well, but it looks like it's gonna do well for these 3 here. They seem to have a lot of respect between each other, giving each other a lot of room.
Well, I can say Kirk is on the soft tyre, so that's why he's looking so racy. We got the same thing with Deadline and Koulias, that's why they're so quick at this point in the race. And all these drivers on the soft tyres are trying to get the moves done quickly, because they know come the end of the race it's going to be very, very difficult with those soft tyres. Kirk looks like he's going to do a double pass down to the left-hander. He's got Haslett. Joker just about holds on to it and forces Kirk round the outside. And Haslett's coming back at Kirk. A little bit of contact, but nothing untoward. And it looks like Haslett and Kirk are going to be drag racing. Kirk in the slipstream down to the hairpin. So it's all go all the time.
Yeah, an all-German drag race there between Haslett and Kirk, and it's just about which German machine will be that little bit faster. But one thing about Kirk, he's not afraid to brake a little bit later than the other drivers, to be able to, get that move done. And sometimes it works out for him, sometimes it doesn't. But it looks like it helped him out a little bit there, you know, get in front of Joker. But yeah, still in this little kind of gaggle of cars of Koulios, Deadline and Bertie. Koulios goes up on the inside of Deadline. Oh, nearly forces Deadline off of the track, but Deadline stays on and nearly attempts to make a move on Koulios again, but Koulios makes a position in front of Deadline. He's now chasing down the Aston Martin of Bertie. Will he, you know, brake a little bit later, so it brings him a little bit closer in this chicane here. As we see Deadline going up on the inside, maybe catching Koulios by surprise here, as Koulios has to take a little bit of evading action, cutting that last bit of the chicane. So yeah, catching
move for the lead.
Out the Deadline. Yeah, we look like we have Sophie going for a move on Midnight. Sophie braking a little bit later than Midnight, but that McLaren is nice and stable into to turn 1, so Midnight still got that P1 under his belt, but we've got Katie Dekai just behind these two, so these two are going to be looking in their rearview mirrors and knowing that Katie Dekai wants to get that win, and he's probably not going to, you know, be too nice about it. He'll try and get in front of them as quick as he can. And
he's lurking with that those medium tyres, which are going to be coming in about now as the soft tyres are starting to wear down for a lot of drivers. As Kirk is not listening to any of that. He's going to run it outside of Hassler in the right-hander, but Pedro was joining him. He's been a bit quiet so far, but he's now joining the fight. Those medium tyres are coming in nicely, so Pedro looking like he's now getting to hang with the track, and you've got to watch out in this sector of the race. He's got better tyre wear and he's very quick at the same time, so keep an eye on Pedro. Oh, Joker with a massive slide. That Ferrari loves to slide around this track. Well, any track. He's just very tail happy. But gorgeous livery from Joker and gorgeous little slide there as well. But back to the front, it does look like this Bass freeway battle is heating up, Sarah.
It does indeed. That's one way to put it. With you know, like you said a few laps ago, you know, Katie the guy is just lurking behind these two at the minute. I think that, you know, he's trying to maybe force them into a mistake, or, you know, capitalise if they do make any sort of mistakes. He did look like Deadline was going to, you know, pop his head out and try and catch Sophie by surprise there, but Sophie, you know, she knows Katie the guy's tactics and she's still in front, but Midnight's got a little bit of space between himself and Sophie. And I think he's going to capitalise on that and try and make as less mistakes as possible. As yeah, very tail happy does Katie the guy get there coming out of the final corner. But yeah, this battle for P1 heating up as we see Kurt getting a little bit squirrely as he comes out of the final corner as well. The final corner seems to be catching a few people out, and it catches Koulios out and forces Bertie off track and has a little bit of an accident there. Koulios forcing, you know, Bertie to have that massive shunt into the wall, which will cost Bertie a lot of time. Yeah, that is, as Mac would say, that's one for the stewards, I'm afraid. As we're also seeing Steve and Piper having a battle for it, sadly over P12, but it doesn't matter what place it's for, these guys are going to go for it hammer and tong, as they would say. So, battles all the way across the field. Shame for Bertie on that one. The damage will disappear in this sprint race as per the rules, but yeah, Koulios unfortunately claiming a victim there in Bertie. So, running through the grid very, very quickly, I'm going to go from... Do you know what? I'm going to go from fourth down, because that's where sort of the mid-pack is at the moment. And we've got Joker, who's got a bit of a gap to the rest. Kirk on those soft tyres is going to start having a bit of pain. He's still got Haslett and Pedro there. This little group are the ones I'm keeping an eye on particularly. Just shadowed by Sarah Hawkey there, who is looking to pick up some spots should anything go awry with any of these drivers. But Deadline's going to have to be careful. His tyres, as well as Koulios's, are going to be starting to feel very second-hand right about now. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And since you've been keeping an eye on that mid-pack battle, Katie Dekai has managed to get that little bit closer to Sophie here. He looks like he's going to challenge a move on the outside of the chicane, which obviously will promote him into the inside here. And he manages just about to get the move done, but Sophie's not giving up just yet. A little bit of a drag race to this final corner here. Who brakes later? Sophie brakes later. But that does force her very out onto that kind of, you know, dirty racing line where there's a lot of rubber. It's not very easy to put that traction down, and that does lose her a spot. But, you know, P3 still, which is a very good position, and will score a lot of points. But I don't think, you know, she's not giving up on the battle just yet. She's going to try and keep as close as she can to this top 3 battle. As we see Katie Dekai now, he's got a new target, which is Midnight, just in front of him, and we'll see how long it takes him to give Midnight a little bit of a battle.
And a little stat for you, I think it was season 1 we had Katie the Kyrander who had his Grand Slam. So fastest laps in both races and pole and both wins. So we know he's quick round here. And he's one of the last people you want behind you. And he's obviously going to be going for the win. But a bit further back, Hassler's picked up a half-second penalty that's going to promote Pedro, who is struggling to get past him at the moment because that 911 has a lot of grip out of corners. So Pedro's going to be very, very thankful to get a free place there. But a bit further forwards, the Ferraris look like the wheels, the rear wheels are going off a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunately what we found quite, a lot through the season, that those Ferraris on tyres, they eat through them. There's probably other words to use for that, but we're going to keep it clean. But obviously just behind with the final few positions, we have Piper fighting with Stephen, as we see a massive off from Sophie there. Obviously that will bring her a little bit further back from Katie the Kai, and that might, the two Ferraris might be fighting it out in these final few stages of the race.
Yeah, I think that rear tyre might have caught Sophie out a little bit, got a little bit loose coming out of the left-hander, and ended up slightly just touching the grass, and then around she went. Unfortunate, but otherwise a great race so far for Sophie, something to be proud of. But Katie the Guy has picked up a half-second penalty, which is definitely not what he's going to be wanting when he's challenging for the lead going into the penultimate lap.
No, especially through here, when you spend that penalty around the the back straight, it does lose you quite a bit of time. Not as much time as say other tracks, but it'll give it just a tiny bit of breathing room for Midnight, but not a lot. But we have the two Ferraris fighting side by side into turn 1, which it's very hard to pass around here. You need to be a little bit brave if you want to kind of keep on that acceleration and go around the outside. But I think we've noticed that so far during the race, that we have a lot of brave drivers that aren't afraid to make these sort of moves. So that's a battle to keep our eyes on. And saying about battle to keep our eyes on, I'm just looking at Katie the Kai and Midnight. Katie the Kai seems to got that a little bit closer to Midnight, even with that penalty. So obviously I think Katie the Kai will want to try and get rid of this penalty and not get another one in the final couple of laps of this race, so he can try and challenge a little bit more for that win. Obviously Katie the Kai, he's in a position here where Midnight, Katie the Kai and Pedro are all fighting for the championship win, so these positions for Midnight and Katie the Kai right now are very important, and it's kind of who scores a little bit more will, as they both kind of force each other off a little bit. But Katie the Kai not afraid to break that a little bit later and secure that inside line, which will promote him into P1. But don't forget, he's got that penalty to spend, which should let Midnight back through into the lead, and he gets a chance to fight another day. Yeah, going back to the championship lead, these this race, the sprint race and the feature race, is very important to Midnight and Katie the Kai to kind of keep that championship battle alive. But I don't know about you, but the lead for the battle for the lead is very kind of interesting. But just behind, we've got the Ferrari battle still going ahead with Joker and Sophie. They've got a little bit closer to each other this lap. And is there anything keeping you interested, Midnight?
Battle for the lead at the moment. Katie the Kai going for a lunge down into turn 1. Will he make it stick?
I think Katie the Kai gets a little bit sideways coming out of turn 1. So these two going side by side. Midnight still in the lead. I think he must have looked out of his rearview mirror there and saw Katie the Kai going a little bit sideways and thought, keeping the lead for just that little bit longer. But we're on the final lap now, so it's all going to come down to who's a little bit braver in these final few corners. Obviously we've not got too much of the lap left, got just over half of the lap left. Katie the Kai lurking just behind Midnight, so it's I think it's going to be a final few corners pass. So if that is Katie the Kai, if he can pass Midnight, putting up a little bit of a battle and a very defensive drive here, trying to prevent Katie the Kai from getting past him. But Katie the Kai on the inside line, who's going to break later? It looks like Midnight breaks a little bit later, but as he's not got the inside line, Katie the Kai on the optimal line, he gets in front just before the Schumacher S's. And will it stay like this though? Will Midnight be able to pass him again in these final few corners?
Oh, we've also got action for P3. Joker has got past Sophie and her rear tyres have basically gone. So Joker up to P3, trying to make a little break from it, get away from Sophie and Kirk. So it changes all over the place from P1, P2, P3. And we have Sophie coming sideways out of the fast chicane. Kirk going for P4. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of contact. Yet those rear tyres have gone for Sophie. She turned in and it just would not go. It promotes Pedro and Haslett up to P5, P6 respectively. Pedro keeping P5. Kirk up to P4 and Joker retaining P3. But at the front,
and
Sarah.
Kyrgios picking up a 3-second penalty on the last lap.
Some would call that justice.
But yeah, Katie the Kite crossing the line in P1. Not too far behind, we have Midnight in P2. Obviously keeping that championship battle alive. In P3, we then have Joker, who came on top of the battle of the Ferraris. But Sophie, I'm sure, will be, ready and raring to fight in the feature race. In P4, we have Kirk. In P5, we then have Pedro.
Where did Pedro come from in that final lap? He was right on the back of Kirk. So, great final lap there from Pedro. Sarah taking P7. Koulios taking P8 with that 3-second penalty, despite finishing ahead of Sarah. Sophie crawling in at P9 with no rear tyres left. Deadline crawling in with no front tyres left. Followed by Bertie with also no front tyres. I'm seeing a theme here. And then we have Piper on those medium tyres getting to the end, looking a little bit more battle hardened after a few little bumps here and there. But taking P12, Stephen in the background taking a very wide line into the final corner. But in that little Yeetle Beetle taking P13. That was an interesting one, Sarah.
That was indeed, and made my job a lot harder, keeping an eye on that battle for the lead, all the way down to, like you say, P4, P5. There's a lot of drivers that kind of, not wormed their way, it's probably a better way of putting it, but kind of navigated their way through the grid a lot, like Pedro starting right from the back. He had a difficult few, starting laps, but towards the end made quite a few moves done and got himself a P5 finish, so that will definitely help in the championship battle. Obviously, like I said, it is between Katie the Kai, Midnight and Pedro at the minute, but Kirk, I've got to say, I'm very impressed with his form recently. Obviously, coming off the back of Cinqua, he's got a P4 finish in the sprint race, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the feature race, because maybe we might see a very late contender to the championship in Kirk as well.
Yeah, he's been on a great run of form recently, particularly at Cinqua the other week. So yeah, more the merrier there. But yeah, top three, and Pedro with the top contender at the moment with the I'm not going to say worst result, but not the best result, but he still managed to squeeze a good handful of points here. But he's going to be looking towards the feature, where this is where the big points are. And the problem is, we do know that Katie the Kite is super quick around here, which is evident by going from the back to the front in the sprint race. So, cracking race there from Kai and, quite frankly, all the field. And highlight of that one for me was Sophie in that 4.58, having an absolutely amazing race. But good shout to all of the drivers there. Lots of good sporting behaviour, a few incidents and drivers letting each other through, and then obviously moving on forwards. That's the idea about this. And what can I say? Let's bring on the feature race, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. If that was a taste of what we can expect in the feature race, then I'm excited and I want to get into it straight away. Right, so just having a quick run down of the qualifying positions for the feature race. We have Katie the Kai in that Corvette, setting a time of a 1:55.017, so nearly a 1:55 flat. And we all know that's a very fast time around here, so well done to Katie the Kai. Just behind him, we have a very surprising, well, not surprising because he's on a good form of results, Kirk in that P2 position in that BMW M6. Only 7 tenths behind Katie the Kai, so very well done to Kirk there. Just behind Kirk, we have Pedro in P3 in that Mercedes. Only a second, well, roughly a second behind Kai. So again, on a form, good qualifying form from Pedro. And just behind Pedro in P4, we have Midnight ISO in that McLaren 650S. In P5, we have Koulios, a good result for him, qualifying result in that BRZ. It's a very difficult car to drive, so well done, Koulios. In P6, just behind Koulios, we have Sophie in that 458. In P7, we have Haslett in the 911. And in P8, on his first event back, we have a Deadline in the Mercedes. And then just behind Deadline, we have a Joker in the other Ferrari 458. And just behind Joker, we have myself, Sarah Hawkey, in the other McLaren 650S. setting up a 1:58.7, so a little bit slower than Midnight and the other Mercedes. In P11 we then have Bertie in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, and rounding out the grid in P12 we have Stephen in the Yeetle Beetle, and that is our grid for tonight. So quite a lot of drivers going for different tyres, but that will probably all change when we go to the feature race if there's any chance of rain.
Yeah, that's an interesting grid, Sarah, and it's going to be one for the ages for the feature race, and let's see what happens. Some interesting weather forecasts, and let's get on with it. Race time.
Let's go. Right, everyone revving up their engines, ready for the lights to go out, and the lights look like they're going out now, and it's green lights, and away we go. We have Kirk on a set of softs, managing a little bit of a slower getaway than Katie the Kai and Pedro, but Kai also on the softs, Pedro on the inters, and out of nowhere, a Sophie challenging for a podium spot already. But Kirk going on the inside of clipping the apex of turn 1, manages to keep P2 for now. So a little bit of a reshuffle in the first couple of positions. But yeah, oh no, Kirk getting on the curb a little bit and spinning that car. So there might be a little bit of moisture on the track already, and some of the drivers on the intermediate tyres, have they started on the right tyres?
Yeah.
Doing a little bit of a spin there from Kirk. Over to you, Midnight.
Yeah, I mean, this is designated as a wet race now. That rain meter is over 1/3. The intermediate runners have taken off. You got Pedro, who went up from, I think, P3, and he's still there at the moment, but he was challenging for the lead. So the inter runners are definitely in the right tyre at the moment, but it looks like the soft tyres, as long as they can get round those drivers on the soft tyres like Kai or Sophie on the medium, the slick tyre runners are just about in the right zone if they can get the heat into the tyres. But Kirk, yeah, round into corner 2, corner 3, and that's unfortunate for him because he was looking like he was in the pound seat there for a moment on those inters. But how long can these inter tyres hold on? Because it looks like coming onto the back straight, it looks like it is a little bit drier out here. As you can see,
yeah,
deadline on those softs, getting past Sarah Hawkey, and Kirk on those softs coming back at the rest of the field. So it's definitely back to slick territory already after half a lap. Those inter runners are going to be suffering.
Yeah, as we see, Deadline also making a few positions up from the start, and we have Joker challenging Midnight here, but Midnight on the inside line of the chicane, and Deadline getting a very good traction coming out of the chicane, already battling Joker, but those two coming together a little bit. They give each other a little bit of room because obviously it is still very slippery out there. It is drying up, but very slippery and very greasy out on track at the minute. But we have Joker and Deadline going side by side over the start finish straight. Looks like Deadline just about to get ahead into the braking zone and gets that position done and dusted. But yeah, a good first lap. Obviously, like you said, for a few people, obviously starting on the softs, it was kind of tiptoeing territory, but it seemed to be kind of falling into their part of the court, into their favour with the slick tyres.
Yeah, Kai up to P1 as well on those soft tyres. They've definitely come in though. He's got Sophie down into the 4th corner, so Kai up to P1, but he is going to be suffering with more tyre wear over a distance than Sophie. But how long will this wet race, well, how long will it stay wet, or will it get wet again? That rain is always hard to predict, particularly around here. Pedro in P3 on those inters. Deadline coming back at him. Now up to P3 almost. Nope, still P4. Pedro outbraking him into the hairpin. No, Deadline, bit of a lunge. He's got P3. So those soft tyres clearly working under braking. And Kirk, who was at the back of the grid after turn 4 at the end of the first lap, already up to P6. He's absolutely got the metal all the way down, and he's going for it. You can see how much more grip he's got just coming through the mid-apex of the corner. He's up to P5 in a matter of corners. He's going to be looking at P4 and Pedro already. Those inter-runners absolutely suffering.
Yeah, because we now fall into that territory where you're burning through the intermediate tyres, so you're going to have less grip than say the slick runners. So obviously the weather radar putting a few drivers wrong, picking the intermediate tyres, but hopefully, obviously I think on the radar And as you can see, it's very cloudy, so there is a chance of rain still throughout the race. We're only 2 laps in, so you never know, it might fall into territory at some point, but at the moment it is the slick runners that have that advantage. As you can see, you know, Katie the Kai, Sophie, Deadline and Kirk having a very fast getaway compared to the drivers with the it's that a midnight facing the wrong way down on the start finish straight that I can see.
You saw nothing.
And it is. we'll skip that, but looked like a little bit of a mistake coming out the final corner, unless we didn't see a little bit of a collision. But yeah,
you saw nothing.
Unusual mistake from midnight, or should I say usual? I have a kind of a way of picking out when midnight spins. But if we go back to P4, we have Kirk, you know, having a little bit of a challenge, trying to chase Deadline and keep Pedro at bay, but he's managing to do that so far. But yeah, everyone seems to be, you know, getting away, you know, settling into the race, which is a very difficult start to the race. Obviously, it's wet, but it's not wet. But it's not wet enough for inters. A bit confusing.
Yeah, and we just saw Stephen in that little Yale Beetle get a double move on Sarah Hawkey and Koulos as well. Stephen on those soft tyres making absolute use of him as Koulos runs wide, and I think that was the hairpin, so he is struggling as well. Or was that just before? It was just before, but you can see those inter tyres are suffering, and it's going to be a matter of time before, even if it rains now, those inter tyres are going to be shredded by the end of the next lap. There's a Joker on his tyres, even Haslett on that 911. They are definitely suffering. Pedro making it work in P5. He's keeping P4 within check, but out front, Kai on those soft tyres, a little bit of backfire on that Corvette, looks gorgeous. Followed by Sophie on the medium, is looking extremely strong today. Deadline, after that shock of a sprint race in lap 1, doing his best so far, running P3 and doing well. But yeah, Kirk looking fast even after that spin. Sarah, what do you think? I think we're going to be looking at the weather, just waiting to see what happens around it. Sarah Hawkey does a little bit of a skip across the chicane, getting away with it. Yeah, well, anywho. And Joker comes in. He's fed up with those inter tyres already, and who will follow him in? Yep, of course. So we've got a couple of drivers getting rid of those inters straight away.
But what tyres will they go on? Will they go on to another set of intermediates? Can they see a rain cloud coming in? Or are they going to go on slicks and follow the likes of Katie the Kai and Sophie for this next little stint of the race? We shall see. But yeah, going back to your question, I think, you know, everyone's doing a pretty good job so far. It's been a very difficult start to the race, and obviously it really depends on the tyre choice. As you can see, the slick runners, they made the right choice in this first opening part of the race. They managing to, you know, get a bit of distance from themselves and the intermediate runners. But will that choice hamper them further into the race? We shall see. But Stephen, it looks like he's on the charge to Pedro. So Pedro's starting to struggle on those intermediate tyres now. Yeah,
those inters are now going to be overheating rather badly. As soon as the moisture on track drops below that 1/3, the heat goes through the roof, and it's a runaway effect. So they get hotter, they move around more, you slide more, they get hotter again, and you just end up shredding the tyres so incredibly quickly. So yeah, Stephen chasing down Pedro. Pedro will not be happy about that. He's wanting to protect his P5. He's looking at the championship thinking he wants more points. But at this point in time, he's hoping for rain, and it's not happening. But out front, those slick runners are starting to run away with it. Kai's strong around here, regardless of choosing the right tyre, and he's disappearing out front. Sophie, again, still looking strong P2. Deadline having the best race of his season so far.
Yeah, and Pedro making a slight mistake in the chicane there, which does promote Stephen into P5. And I don't know about you, but this is very Stephen-esque for you know, that Red Bull, the opening stage of this season. He had a very good Red Bull race, and it's very kind of, like I say, very like his drive there, managing to, you know, get lots of moves done, some battle with quite a few drivers in the front. And obviously he's had quite a challenging season as Stephen in this Yeetle Beetle, as we call it. It's not one of those cars that we see up in the, you know, the top contenders, but it's a very challenging car to drive. So big props to Stephen for picking it, and for trying his best. But he's doing well so far. So maybe we found the conditions, you know, that Stephen excels in. It's kind of that Not wet, not dry, but in the middle.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. He definitely excelled in the Red Bull Ring where it was very, very challenging conditions. He seems to do well in changeable conditions. And we have a pit stop right down the back of the grid already again, Sarah. So,
yeah, with Mr. Midnight himself. Is that a possible damage? Is that maybe picking the wrong tyre? Has he seen something on the radar? We shall see. So obviously this race is very difficult. It's throwing up a few challenges. As I could see, the wipers of Midnight's car going. So maybe, potentially, on the intermediates, Midnight has seen something on the radar and he's the first one to come in and get a fresh set of intermediate tyres.
the question is that going to be a mistake? Because, yeah, what can I say? 2 pit stops in, what, 2.5 laps? It's watching Kai. What's Kai going to do? This is the interesting one. Kai into the pits. So, I think we're going to see a whole host of drivers into the pits straight away. But Sophie carries on. And so does Deadline. So, Kai taking the plunge. He's going clearly for different tyres. Kurt going round again. Has Kai made a mistake? Interesting.
Very interesting. Obviously, Katie the Kai had quite a distance to himself and Sophie, but he's decided to come in and potentially going on the intermediate tyres. We shall see. Although those tyres do look slick, but we will see as soon as he comes out of the pits.
Stephen in. Pedro in.
Very slide in by Stephen. So potentially, I think it's intermediate territory. As I can see, the wipers getting faster and faster on these cars, and it looks like Katie the Kai is also pitted for Inters. So a little bit of wet weather. Will that hamper the likes of Sophie, Deadline, Kirk as they go through this kind of first opening part of the track? We shall see. It's probably going to get very slippery very quickly, so these guys are going to have to tiptoe round and or, you know, wait to put the power on so they don't cause themselves any incidents.
Yeah, and this is very, very much like lap 1 already. It's right on that bubble where do you blink and go in the pits and change tyres like a few drivers already have, or just keep going? I mean, so far Kirk is having an outstanding race despite having a spin, running P3, and he's going to be perhaps pushing his luck a little bit. I mean, maybe for the best, maybe for the worst, but we're going to find out very quickly. But we are absolutely on that bubble. Will these drivers come in at the end of this lap? Top 3. Who knows at this point? But Kai running those intermediate tyres now. Has he made a mistake? Bertie, also, who was running plumb last at the end of the first lap after, I think, a spin, running P5. So just circulate him has done him proud here. So he's doing well.
Yeah, and like you said, some of the obviously some slightly different, you know, decision calls with the top 3, and Bertie has managed to, as I said, that interrupted Deadline and Kirk coming into the pits. They obviously getting a little bit too challenging for them, potentially going on to those set of intermediate tyres. But I think the question we're all wanting to ask is, how long is this wet weather going to last? Is it going to be another lap 1 where it rains, you know, quick downpour and then it settles up? We shall see. Obviously, it's very, you know, changeable conditions, which are not the easiest to predict and not the easiest to kind of, you know, factor in for strategic calls.
Quite right. And Sophie in the lead has gone round again, and it's tipping down, Sarah. This is going to be tricky. As you can see, it's just running wide into turn 3 there.
We've got a big spin from Bertie there. So I think the decision to go on those intermediates was the right call, as Bertie, he didn't even put much power down in that Aston Martin, just spun around. I think, you know, me and you, we know how easy it is to spin an Aston Martin, so even in any sort of weather, but especially wet weather. So yeah, unfortunate for Bertie, but I'm sure he'll come into the pits, repair any damage, get on those intermediate tyres, and be ready to challenge a few drivers again in the middle to the end part of the race.
Yeah, I think you're right. Unfortunate for Bertie there. Yeah, there's just no grip out there. What Sophie is doing is amazing, but she has definitely gone a lap too long. Because if we can see Sophie heading down the straight towards the hairpin, will she be able to stop the car? That is the question. But just behind, only straight behind now, is Kai and Kirk. Kirk did not take any fuel in that pit stop as well, but Deadline did take a full tank of fuel. So we've got a difference in strategy already, and then we do have Stephen, who has gone to those inters, as well as Koulios and Pedro for another set of inters. A big freeway fight for P6, so lots going on all the way around the track. Where do you look?
Yeah, there's so much going on, which makes our job even harder. But yeah, these 3 at the moment, obviously, they did come in relatively same time. That was a little bit of a shove from Koulias, still got elbows out, forcing Stephen out a little bit, but that does promote Pedro up a place, and so does Koulias. Yeah, these sort of conditions, they're very difficult to drive, as we see Kirk overtaking Sophie, so Sophie really struggling on those medium tyres now.
Yeah, she's going to be down to P7 or 8 by the time she gets into the pits at this point. She's got absolutely no grip at all. Making it work somewhat, but it's going to be one of those where you just cannot put the grip down. And if you put any sort of... Yeah, as you can see, it's not gone well. A bit of a reset as well. As soon as you get on the grass as well, it is less than no grip. So... unlucky for Sophie there. She's going to be falling down. She's got to pit this lap. But Kai up into P1, Kirk up into P2. We said he was having a good set of races, didn't we? And he's obviously making it work at this moment. Deadline P3, having the best race of the season as well so far. Sophie in the pits.
Yeah, I think that's the right call from Sophie there, coming into the pits. Hopefully, you know, this rain does last a little bit longer. But Stephen having to cut that chicane a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, at some point, Stephen's got back past Koulias, but I didn't get a chance to say the sentence. So these two are having a bit of a dicey battle with Pedro just in front, who looks like he's thinking of making a move on our Haslett down into turn 1, and it is now completely soaked out that the intermediate tyres are going to be struggling. So it's in full wet territory, Sarah. Particularly when you come into the first corner, you have to get that car stopped. Stephen ploughing into turn 1. He's got it to work, but a little bit wide, so he's back up to P6, but with Joker right on the back of him as well. Yeah,
it's going to be, I'm going to use my phrase again, of tiptoeing around the track just while it's in this kind of wet tyre territory. And it's going to be an element of kind of judging where your rivals or competitors on track are going to brake, if they give you enough room. These conditions are very hard to overtake cleanly, because obviously you've got to factor in where you're braking, where you need to turn in, and where your competitors are going to brake as well, and if they're going to brake enough to make the corner. So yeah, these conditions are very hard to overtake. So I mean, I'll be interested to see if we do see many overtakes, like Formula One, when it does get really bad conditions. We don't see many overtakes, as our unfortunate Hassler outbroke himself into the hairpin here, which does promote Pedro into P4.
I think earlier in the lap as well, I think Stephen and Koulias have either had a coming together or Koulias had to spin, because he dropped off the back. We had Joker behind him, and Joker is ahead of the pair of them, and now obviously after Haslett's little moment through the hairpin, he's on the back of Joker's on the back of Haslett as well, so Joker having a great lap so far. But yeah, you're right.
We all know how difficult that Ferrari is to drive, so Joker's doing a phenomenal job so far.
Quite right. Kai out front, looking serene at the moment. He's just getting the car stopped and turned exactly where he needs to, with Kirk behind, followed and chased by Deadline. And again, Kirk didn't take any fuel on at that stop, so I'd say net P2 at the moment. Deadline is looking strong.
Yeah, obviously I don't know if Kirk saw on the radar that this rain was to last too long, so maybe he tried to factor that in, but we all know how GT7 physics, they can throw a spanner in the works, shall we say. So hopefully, that plan works out for Kirk. If not, like I say, Deadline, I don't think he'll be too afraid to take Kirk's place. But yeah, just looking across the grid, like you say, Joker on the back of Haslett, Pedro in P4. Seems to be struggling a little bit with the traction in that Mercedes at the minute, but just having a quick scan through. Everyone seems to be, trying to go into their Zen mode, trying to channel their inner, wet weather driver, as it's, you have to adapt to these weather conditions very quickly. You have to kind of drive these cars differently, and depends, how much practice that drivers have put in. Some drivers obviously are used to driving in the wet a little bit more than others, some taking it a little bit carefully.
Yeah, quite right, and there's always a couple that thrive in these conditions. For one, whenever we see Koulias in these conditions, he does tend to do well, but that BRZ is tricky, so it can negate a little bit of that natural talent for the conditions. So what can I say? It's one of those where we don't know what's going to happen at this point. We just do not know. But at the moment, it looks like the race is starting to settle down a little bit. Those wet conditions will be with us for a little while. But will any driver be thinking 3, 4, 5 laps ahead, thinking, right, I need fuel, I need to keep an eye out for if the track goes slick enough to be able to switch back to those tyres. But at the moment, not the moment.
Following on from your point there, it's going to be kind of the braver driver who decides to go on those slicks first, and then all the drivers follow him. A little bit of a spin there, or kind of an off-track excursion from Haslett there, which I think Koulios will be ready to try and pounce on that position there, if he can. But yeah, we also have Katie Dekai getting on the back of Bertie, so Katie Dekai looking to lap Bertie. Bertie obviously being shown the blue flags, but that obviously very unfortunate for Bertie with those couple of spins when it was chucking it down. As we see Katie Dekai overtaking Bertie now, putting himself a lap ahead. But we also have a battle of the McLarens about to emerge as well. I think we all know who's going to come out on top between these two. But yeah, also the battle between Koulios and Haslett.
Stephen in.
Koulios braking a lot later there. I'm surprised he got that stopped into turn 1.
Yeah, well, you can always count on Koulios for a late dive manoeuvre. That does happen.
Yep,
but,
I know that.
Yeah, don't we all know it? But Stephen in as well. That's it's a bit of a shock. Is this a retirement? No, it keeps going.
Ooh,
that's
it's not softs.
He's blinked. He's gone for softs, and he's also gone across.
That's the right call.
I would. Yeah, no, it was not the right call.
Nice little pirouette there.
That was ambitious. As Top Gear would say.
To add some, style points into the race. Nice little pirouette. I think the judge would hold a 10, for that pirouette there, Stephen. Well done. Yeah,
that was a perfect 360. But as Top Gear would say, that was ambitious. Ambitious but rubbish. Bless him for trying. He saw an opportunity and he's gone for it. There is a drying line already, but it's not there yet. You have, and if you go for that basic undercut onto slicks, you have to stay off the curves, off the wet part of the track, which unfortunately looks like it is still most of it at this point. But
yeah, well, on board with Koulios there, you can see the mark on the left-hand side. It's just over a third, so it's still in that kind of drying territory, but it's not quite dry just yet. We see a lot of drivers on the intermediates taking full advantage of that wet part of the track, trying to cool their tyres down, try and keep on these tyres for that a little bit longer until they know for certain that it is a drying track.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I am extremely impressed so far with our very own Kirk, one of our commentators, who's running P2. He's keeping his tyres in really good shape and I think Kai's keeping him honest. He's only a corner behind with what I think is much better tyre wear, so it's going to open up strategy for him. But also Deadline, just straight behind the pair of them, looking extremely strong with equally as good tyre wear, more fuel. So lots going on, but we can't understate Pedro running P4. Not the ideal first stint from him with getting caught out in those inter tyres, but what can you do? You take, big slide, held it, got away with it. A bit of a, well, that's style points right there. But he's going to be happy he's running P4 if abusing the track limits a little bit. And that's why he's pushing, because he's got Joker right behind him, who we know is very, very good strategically thinking and also extremely quick.
Yes. That's one thing, obviously being strategic, but it's another thing being quick as well. And to do both, that's a skill that that we've seen. Joker not being afraid to go on tyres that others, is that Midnight going onto the slicks as well? Oh, that was close. I think Midnight caught Stephen out by surprise there as he came sliding past the camera.
That was perfect timing.
Style points for Stephen, yeah. That was good. That caught me by surprise as well, just seeing Stephen slide across the camera past Midnight. But yeah, Midnight going on the slicks, so Midnight's seen an opportunity to try the slicks out, see if it's time. But we will keep on board with him for a lap or so, see how he gets on, see if he does Stephen and does a nice little 360. As as we join Deadline and Kirk, they're still going on the wet part of the track, still on the intermediate, so they don't feel it's the right time to go onto those slicks yet.
Yeah, you got a couple of drivers who are, we'll just say, chancing their luck. And when you're in the last 3 or 4 positions, you do feel like tempting fate a little bit more, just because you've got nothing to lose. Whereas the guys out front, they have the time where they can chill out, take a lap or two to think about it. Kai's got a lead. Kirk is under pressure from deadline, so that's going to be building. But if you're out front, you have time to think about it. Change the tyre a lap or two later. Pedro running wide and turn 1 a little bit. But yeah, that's something you can't do on these slick tyres when you get to them. But yeah, these drivers on Inters can take their time, particularly if they're in the top 3 or 4, and then go onto them when it is correct. So, as you see, even Haslett on those Inters still struggling. If you get offline, even with the Inters, it is treacherous, let alone the slicks. And Sophie making her way back up. She was in P9, but she's up to P8 now. And she is slowly making her way back towards the front, I feel. Now is going to be on the back of Haslett. So lots to come in this race, not even halfway yet. But lots of, I think, weather and lots of action to come.
And I can confirm, Midnight survived the lap on the slicks. I kept on board with him and he survived the lap. So well done. You go into lap number 2 in on slicks.
You were just waiting for a spin, wasn't you?
I was, yeah. I'm a bit disappointed that it didn't come, actually. I was expecting a nice little pirouette again.
Someone's had a pirouette in the final sector, and it was Stephen, and he's big one. That's a big one. He's had a moment coming out the final corner, and on the straight, got on back on the wet stuff on those slicks, and he's ploughed straight into the barrier. So, yeah, as I was saying, if you go offline, which he's still offline into the first corner, that gets back online. But yeah, it is that treacherous out there. You see Deadline cooling his tyres as well in those Inters. So yeah, it's complete mixed territory at the moment for those tyres.
Yeah, and I feel like if you want to go to those slicks as well, you've got to treat it like a train. You've got to keep on that dry line as if it was a train track. So even if you chance your arm and you go off the dry line, even a little bit, these physics, they won't be very forgiving. They will just spin you around, and unfortunately that's where we've seen a couple of times where drivers going even a little bit onto the wet line, and it's just spun them around, as we see Haslett having a little bit of a collision there into the pits. Very unfortunate, sliding into the pits, but very easily done there with that wall just kind of sticking out.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a collision between Sophie and Haslett, or Haslett and the barrier. I mean, we've seen it a couple of times this season, Sarah, haven't we? Between a couple of drivers and Koulios. So it does happen. I think we saw it particularly for quite a few drivers at Autopolis this season. But that is a track where it will catch you out very, very easily. And these wet conditions, it's just so easy to lock up and plough straight into a barrier. But Haslett in. Will he be going for those slick tyres as well? The Joker across the track. His rear tyres have gone. He has to pit this lap. He is doing high-speed gardening.
He's doing a little bit of gardening for the Nurburgring, and I'm sure their ground team will be very thankful for that. It saves them a job. But yeah, very easy to do around here. It's different to some of the tracks that we've been. Obviously, you've got a lot of grass before you hit the barriers, and sometimes in these sort of conditions, it makes it 10 times worse, because once you get on the grass, there's no stopping the car until you get to a barrier. As we see Stephen having a nice little seat as he sees Kirk and Deadline going past him. He gets a nice front row view for those two there. But yeah, unfortunate for Stephen, that Yeetle Beetle, as we call it. It's very hard to drive in these sort of conditions, especially on the slick tyres. So, yeah, I mean, I commend him for trying, but I think maybe he just went on the slicks just that little bit too early, and because even you see the likes of Kirk and Deadline, who have been promoted into P1 and P2, as Kay did the Kai's coming into pit, they're still struggling on those intermediate tyres.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think Stephen got under the rear wing of Kai, ended up on the wet stuff as well, and just plain understeered over the divider for the pit lane. So he is, in fact, now retired. So we have lost Stephen. He was having such a strong early part of the race, but unfortunately the conditions have got the better of him in this one. But fight for the lead at the moment Kirk and Deadline going at it. Kai has pitted, and no doubt he has gone for medium tyres. So he's going to go on a big stint with lots of fuel. So he is sort of the net leader in these conditions at the moment. But for the meantime, Kirk P1, Deadline P2, right on the tail of Kirk and Pedro P3, a couple of corners behind, swiftly followed by Kai, who is on that full tank and fresh, slick tyres. So he's looking strong.
Yeah, and Pedro will know, obviously, Katie the car behind him. This is the, again, a fight for the championship. If Pedro stays in front of Katie the Kai, they give a little bit more of a fighting chance going into round number 10 and the final. So these two battling out is very important for their championship positions.
Interestingly, Hassler, he went for another set of intermediate tyres a lap or so ago, but I can only think that's going to shred his tyres. But I have seen Joker take her to the pits. He's gone for slicks, and so has, I think, Koulios. So I think at the moment Hassler is going to be struggling as Joker cuts to the white line, gets a 3-second penalty, runs wide into the wet stuff, and he's going to be a bit slow for a few corners.
Yeah, as we join the battle with Katie the Kai and Pedro again. Katie the Kai having a lot more speed on Pedro here, but remember, obviously, he's on the slicks. Oh, he pops his head out. He goes a little bit braver into that chicane there, but Pedro staying in front. I was surprised that Katie the Kai popped his head out and tried to force Pedro into a mistake there, because that could have caused an incident where Katie the Kai went on the wet line. And he's trying again here. He's going to try and get that speed down on the dry line. Pedro going on the slightly more wet line to keep those intermediate tyres alive, and that we'll see Katie the Kai be promoted into P2 and back into the net lead, as you said.
Yeah, Kai getting the spot up to P2. Looks like Pedro's trying to get as much life out of these inter tyres as possible, go as long as possible. As Kirk has, he has gone to medium tyres, so just as Bertie goes around the outside, Kirk remembering not to cut that white line, so he's now looking good. He still hasn't taken on a full tank of fuel, but he's taken on what he needs, I feel. Bertie lets him through straight away again. Sophie in the pits as well. It's all change at the moment. Sarah coming into the pits, getting off those intermediate tyres. So Sarah pitting from P6, running very high at the moment. And Koulios, he's on soft tyres. Haslett still on those inters, so we have a complete mix of tyres and strategies going on at the moment. It's very hard to follow, actually. But Deadline, well, he's doing his thing again. He's going with dead tyres, so he's going to become drift line yet again. There we go, I called it. And absolutely instantly, he's got no rear tyres whatsoever. He's going to be struggling. And I can only feel that's going to... It's not going to ruin his strategy, but it's going to really drop him time to Kirk. But he's going to have to take on less fuel, so you might see these two battle again. Pedro's got back past Kai.
Drivers. Oh, has he?
I think
a rare mistake by Katie the Kai there, maybe, and I can see the wipers moving again. So, is there potentially more rain on the way? Will that catch Katie the Kai out?
Well, who knows at this point? Pedro does run wide, so his front tyres are dead. Kai gets back up to P2. Deadline's crawling into the pits, quite rightly so, because he's got 2 dead tyres and 2 very close on the way. So Kai will inherit the lead after what seems like a interesting lap out there for him. So Kai will go round again. And I can only feel Pedro is going to come in. No! Pedro going round again!
Yeah.
It's wetter out there. It's raining, Sarah.
Yeah, as we see Bertie unfortunately making a mistake coming out of the chicane as well and onto the very wet grass / mud. But yeah, it started to rain again. Obviously, Pedro on very dead intermediate tyres. That does see him kind of go out onto turn 1 and miss the apex. But yeah, obviously that's going to hurt and hamper the drivers that have gone back onto the slicks. But will it be wet enough to change back onto the intermediate, or is it just a passing shower?
It looks like it's in the final sector where it is wettest, because down into turn 1, Deadline picks up that 3-second penalty. He's touched the white line, but Deadline's gone back to inter tyres. Sector 1 is dry. Well, it's dry enough, and it does look like some drivers are staying out on the slicks, while others are pitting for inters. Sophie's gone to inters again. Koulios is staying out on softs. Hassler is doing Hassler things and doing other things, and Joker's staying out. I think it's just stay out time, as long as it's not too wet. and you can sort of skid around and avoid pitting, that's what all the drivers are doing. And so Sarah's gone to inters, and it's now drier in the final sector again. So that was a momentary shower, which on the radar must have looked rather intimidating, but unfortunately some drivers have blinked, gone to the inters, and it might not be the right case, as Pedro has just gone for completely worn down inters. So what will he do this lap?
Yeah, it's that tricky territory again where it's, you know, if you see someone on the radar and it looks a lot bigger than what it is, then that can intimidate some drivers going onto that intermediate tyre and, you know, trying their best to keep them alive, as Pedro's doing there, you know, using the full rubber on those intermediate tyres. I'm surprised they're not slicks yet. But yeah, it's hard to call these sort of conditions because I think I'm the sort of the driver, I prefer it to be either fully wet or fully dry. When it gets into these tricky conditions, it, you know, it just kind of blows your strategy into like apart. It blows, you know, tactics apart. It's all about just surviving and getting through the race when it's these sort of conditions.
Yeah, quite right. And this is very important for the championship as well. Kai looks like he's made all of the right decisions all the way through the race so far, navigating the weather beautifully. But Kirk having a cracker of a race.
I'm on board with Pedro's pit crew, and I can see some grip on those tyres, so I think Pedro will be going on to another set of intermediate tyres here.
We'll have to wait and see what happens. But at the moment, all the drivers still circulating. Sophie still trying to make her way around the track. She's sticking with those inters, so I don't know what the right call is at the moment. What will Pedro go for? Obviously, it's key for him at the moment to stay out and, well, put some mileage on the track as soon as he's got some fuel. So what will he go for, Sarah?
Well, I'm staying on board with him at the minute, and it looks like, I don't know, I think he's gone for another set of intermediate tyres here.
No, he has gone for mediums. He has.
For mediums.
So he feels that it's time to make the switch to drier tyres. Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting call there, and you know, there is a very dry line appearing, but the the clouds around the Nurburgring do look quite menacing still. So I don't know if it's like, well, it's typical English weather in Germany at the minute, where it's drying up, but it looks like it's going to rain again. But it's very misty and murky. So obviously we're at 17 laps in, so there's plenty more, you know, opportunity to rain or dry up, which I'm sure will cause more havoc for the drivers, as Koulios has an off-track excursion there coming back onto the track. I'm sure Pedro is very thankful that he waited for him to go past, but yeah, Koulios having a little bit of a troubling time out there in that BRZ.
Yeah, it's tricky out there, particularly with that car in these conditions. And having a look round the grid at the moment, I can only feel the drivers on inters are, well, I've said it before, they're suffering now. It's at that point when the inters aren't giving the grip and they're just overheating. So Deadline and I think it was Sophie and Haslett and Sarah Hawkey are going to be having, you can see Sophie, she is running in the wet, just trying to keep those tyres down to temperature rather than having them overheat. So it is at that really, really tricky level where if you go wide, you're going to need those inter tyres, but on the fast bit, they're overheating. So unlucky for some of the strategists out there at the moment. I mean, I think you need a paid strategist for this race alone.
Yeah, if I was my own strategist, I'd be scratching my head right now and thinking, I don't know what to do. And I think that's what I did during this race, all in all. But yeah, I think the weather issues causing a bit of, you know, troubling times for some of the strategists of the drivers. Because, like I say, these sort of conditions are the worst sort to drive in. It's you never know what's around the corner. It's very unpredictable. You know, you don't know where the grip is. You don't know where the grip, you know, where you can put the power down, if the car's going to respond to you at all. It's, yeah, very, very, very tricky conditions to drive. But as you can see, all 11 drivers doing a phenomenal job, and Stephen as well in that opening stint doing a phenomenal job. As it's not easy. So a big, you know, pat on the back for all the drivers for just getting through these conditions.
Yeah, we've had...
oh,
go for it.
I was going to say, somewhere, Koulios has got back in front of Pedro, and Pedro having a little bit of troubling time on those mediums as Kyrgios just shot past him again, and Pedro really needs this P6 here and to try and get back onto the, in and around where KD the Kai is.
Yeah, and both of these championship contenders are ahead of him at the moment, despite Pedro running in the top 2 and 3 consistently. It just shows you, when you pit and take on a lot of fuel, if you run too long on a set of tyres, it can really drop you down the field. But obviously, on an alternate, the other drivers still have to come in to the pits, and no one's going to the end just yet, so it will shuffle round as the race goes on. It's a tricky one, this, with nobody yet being able to go to the distance, although we are getting to that area where a final stop will take you to the end, but again, it's that weather. So, lots to play for and lots to guess at still.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Lots to guess, and it's the guessing which is the most difficult bit when you're trying to drive and guess what the weather's doing. And GT7 doesn't like to help you with that. It just makes your job even harder when you're driving. But it's good to see, Bertie still circulating as well after having kind of that difficult time in the first opening stint of the race in that Aston Martin, but he's doing a phenomenal job so far. And it looks like it's about to rain again. I've just jumped on with KD the Kite, and the windscreen wipers are they're back on, and it looks like in that final sector it's starting to pour with rain again, so another quick shower. Will this hinder KD the Kite?
Well, we will find out very, very shortly. Those on Inters are going to be relishing this at the moment because they're going to actually have some grip, what one hopes. So down the main straight, because he has still cooling those tyres, he's going to have to pit this lap regardless. But I did see Sophie taking the pits, and despite it raining, she's come out on mediums.
Yeah, and I think you can see just coming out of the pits how slippery it was for Sophie there. So she did very well to hold it. That Ferrari was swaying side to side, and it's making her job even harder. The
question is she going to manage to go to the wrong tyre every single time she's gone to the pits?
We've got a spin from KD the Kai coming around the final corner.
Yeah, it's thus proving it's tricky out there, and it's sodden out there. It is backed into conditions. Although the way it's happening, these showers are just making it tricky for 3 or 4 corners, and then it's back to the almost near slick conditions. But Deadline's going to be relishing this half a lap. He is still on the Inters, but as you can see, lots of drivers still running the slick tyres. So Kai
spin from Kirk as well, coming out of turn 1. So like you say, with that fresh shower, it has laid down a little bit of water on the track for those slick runners, making their job even harder on this first opening half of the lap. Will it dry out enough when they go back to the other half of the track? We shall see. But yeah, making their job even harder, and I'm sure they're loving the fact that they're on the wrong tyres at the when it's raining and when it's showering, and it's making their job harder and a bit more trickier. But we get to see the drivers' full ability here, and they're doing a phenomenal job in these sort of conditions, just being able to drive around, in my opinion.
Yeah, unfortunately Haslett's rear tyres or left-hand tyres have given up. He has to come in this lap. That's not a matter of skill there, that is a matter of basically running on flat tyres. It's running on the rims, if anything. It'd be great if it was on a train track, but not quite so much on a wet Nurburgring. It happens, but you can push your luck around it. Occasionally it'll come back and bite you. Sarah comes power sliding out of the final chicane, as I call it, the VDOL chicane, what it used to be called. Can't remember what it's called now, but at least I know what I'm talking about, where it is. But regards, I think it's like the NGK chicane now. Anywho, bit of a power slide out of there. And you can see those conditions are tricky.
There, you see.
Clearly, kudos points if you have played Project Gotham.
Yeah, just thought, why not have a bit of fun. Actually, I was just trying to drive there, and the car making my job even harder. But one person that is doing a phenomenal job the whole way through this race is Kirk. Obviously, we had his spin on lap number 1, but that didn't seem to hinder him too much. He's he's got into P2. He's, for the majority of the time, he stayed there, and obviously Deadline keeping him honest as well. So these two, obviously, they all season long, Kirk has been improving and improving, and these final few rounds, I think we've seen a different Kirk, and it's good to see. He sometimes struggles with a little bit of kind of what would you call it? Kind of, he doubts himself quite a bit. And I think these final few rounds where he's had phenomenal results, I think that's really boosted him, and it's good to see. And as he has a little bit of a troubling time coming into this part of the course, but yeah, it's good to see him, back on GT7 and then getting better and better the more he does, and it's good to see his confidence building up again.
Yeah, some drivers do suffer with a little bit of confidence-based performance. When your head drops, you have a bad race or two, it can make it very easy to get back into the groove. But Kirk certainly finding his grooves in the last couple of events. He's had a tricky race here, but he's still running P2. I mean, overall, these conditions, we have seen the likes of Kai, who has dominated here in the past, have a spin as well. So absolutely nothing to blame Kirk for there. But yes, I think you're right. He set a great vein of performance right at the end of the championship, and he's doing well. But so is, I'm going to give some props at the moment to Kyrgios, who's running very high, despite a very interesting few laps with some interesting tyre calls earlier in the race. But ahead of Pedro, who has obviously been our championship leader and is one of the fastest drivers on the track as well. So Kyrgios having a very good race at the moment, but he's going to be wanting to get in the pits and maybe go for mediums towards the end, hoping he can make one more stop, go right to the end. So Kyrgios looking strong at the moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, props to all of the drivers during this race. It's not been the easiest, and although obviously we're talking about Kirk, Deadline, Kyrgios, I think all of them should give themselves a massive pat on the back, especially during these changeable conditions, and doing a pretty good job so far.
I have to say, during that stint, with Deadline going to Inters, he's lost a significant amount of time to Kirk. They were nose to tail at the end of the previous stop, and now Kirk's going into turn 1 with Deadline not even coming around the final chicane. So, and as you can see, cutting the corner, he's got no front grip at all. He's going to be coming in the pits, maybe for the last time, going to slicks and to the end. So, Deadline, those Inters not working out for him well in this stint.
No, and it just goes to show, obviously, as you called there, different compounds. We saw Kirk have an early opportunity to go into those slicks, and it seemed to pay off for him. Where Deadline, thinking I need to stay on the intermediates for that a little bit longer, just to get the car, to operate how I like it. And obviously that has cost him a few, a position now, but it has cost him quite a lot of time to Kirk. But hopefully in this final stint he can get that back. But we see Pedro and Midnight be promoted into P3 and P4, as we see Deadline and Kyrgios come into the pits. So these two having a pretty good race so far, and Midnight looking to overtake Haslett here under blue flags. Yeah, Pedro gets a little bit of free space on track at the minute to claw back some time to the likes of Kirk and Midnight. But will he be able to do it? Obviously, we've got 11 laps left. So it's going to get tight, and especially if it decides to rain a little bit.
Kai definitely finding the limits of the track that outbrakes himself into that final chicane, and thus proving even the best of us can have moments on this track. I mean, that was a moment away from disaster, but he got away with it. And Kirk getting around the corner a bit more sedately but safely, and that's the key. So yeah, now it's at that level where all the drivers are going to be thinking about their final pit stops, and basically here we go. Haslett has another moment. Just about gets away with it, avoids any damage, avoids hitting the arm code there, and he's got away with it. But it does show, even with slick tyres on a dry track, you go off that racing line and you're heading towards the barrier very, very quickly.
Yeah, but lucky enough not to pick up extensive damage, so that shouldn't cost him too much time. But obviously, it looks like Deadline there picked up that 3-second penalty as he came out the pits. They seem to have got quite a few drivers out today, especially in these conditions. It's very hard, as the pit exit, not a lot of drivers are driving through there at high speed, so it's hard to kind of drive that pit exit out. So it has caught quite a few drivers out. As we see a yellow flag, is that a possible... I'm not quite sure what happened there. Possible mistake by either Midnight or Haslett coming around that final sector. But yeah, we're getting to the closing stage of this race here, and obviously still a few battles that are going to commence in these final few laps, especially when all the drivers have come in, took their final pit stop, and then we'll know, who's on to win or who's on to fight. As we see, obviously, like I say, quite a few positions may change. We obviously have Midnight in 2P3, but he will have to pit in the next lap or so because those soft tyres are looking like they've seen better days. Pedro's only a few corners behind, so Midnight's going to have to put his foot to the floor and try and get to that pit stop as soon as he can.
I've got a sneaking feeling, Sarah, that there's weather incoming because a lot of drivers are out there on very, very worn tyres and refusing to pit. So, I don't know, I think drivers are pushing the envelope on the tyre wear just to stay out to see what the weather does. And unfortunately, as you can see, there is no rear grip in that McLaren at the moment.
No, it doesn't look like it, and it's making Midnight's job even harder. Oh! As Katie the Kai comes down the first corner and sees the sideways Koulios, I bet that would have caught Katie the Kai by surprise there. But yeah, even I wasn't expecting to see a Koulios there coming out of turn 1. But it looks like Koulios will just tuck in behind Katie the Kai again, and I don't think he'll be able to unlap himself now. But yeah, like you say, maybe potentially a few drivers seeing a little bit of weather coming their way.
Pedro up to P3.
Yeah, Pedro up to P3. Midnight tucking in behind Haslett here. Maybe potentially those worn tyres are causing a little bit of havoc for Midnight. But yeah, I'll be interested to see if there is any weather on the radar, as Midnight is coming into the pits now.
Yeah, I think that had to be done.
He's got a sideways deadline in that final few corners. Potentially a little bit of a mistake there, maybe potentially a touch on the grass, which has just sent him round facing the wrong way and picking up some damage.
Yeah, that was unfortunate for Deadline, that front right. He's been running P2 for some of this race and now running P6 with damage, so he's not had the best second half to the race. You can see, yeah, he couldn't stop coming into that final chicane, so he is going to be falling back through the order. He's going to have to come into the pits. He's got to surely come in the pits, or is this going to go to the end? No, he's going to push his luck. He's going to carry on. Maybe he's waiting for another shower. Hopefully he can change his tyres and get a free pit stop. Well, it's all happening today, Sarah. It really is. Deadline coming down the pits, coming down the pit straight, going for that P5. Has he got the grip? Oh, not on the rears.
Well, they did get a little bit sideways coming out of turn 1, should I say? But he's trying to fight Midnight here. Obviously, has got a little bit more damage to that Mercedes, which is going to make it a little bit harder to stay in front of Midnight here. As obviously Midnight has come in, took a fresh set of slicks on. So obviously Midnight will be naturally the faster driver here, as Deadline has got a little bit of damage. But like you say, will Deadline coming in repair that damage? Will he push his luck to the end of the race? We shall see. But just further behind, we have Joker a few corners behind, then Koulios. And it looks like everyone else is pretty much kind of not near each other on the track at the minute. So it's waiting for that final kind of pit stops to pan out and see if it'll bring them a little bit closer together again.
I think you're right, and I can speak from experience. Deadline is hard to pass. So there's going to be a battle that's going to be going on there for a lap or two, I feel. Yeah, like you said, there's it's all settling down at the moment. Although Kirk has just managed to get sideways. So he's definitely having a fun one out there today, but he's still in a safe P2. Pedro running P3 at the moment. He's making that strategy work. But the ones I'm going to be looking out for at the moment are going to be Koulios, who was ahead of Joker, but he's fallen behind him. And I think Koulios on those soft tyres is going to be pushing his luck to get to the end. Another 11 laps on those softs. But Joker looks like he will be going to the end, so a couple of drivers making their final stop already.
Yeah, and we still see this battle between Midnight and Deadline still going on. And obviously both on slick tyres. Deadline with a little bit of damage. We shall see how this goes on. Deadline taking a little bit of the wet line there. I'm very surprised about that. But obviously trying to cool those tyres down a little bit. But breaking into turn 1, Deadline goes a little bit wide. Midnight takes full advantage of that and goes onto that inside line and manages to get in front of Deadline here.
Yeah, it looks like Deadline, as you say, he ran a bit wide. As soon as you're on that wet line, there just isn't the grip there to turn the car, get the car rotated. So unlucky for Deadline, but he's never going to give a place up, so he's going to keep pushing, no doubt.
And I don't know if Koulos is being a little bit of a nuisance here to KD the Kai. Obviously, Koulos will be seeing some blue flags being waved here, there and everywhere for him. But yeah, just staying in front of KD the Kai here, as maybe, you know, maybe Kirk's thinking, can you slow KD the Kai down a little bit? But I'm sure, you know, Koulos just wants to try his best to go and catch Joker, as he's only a corner or so away. But yeah, obviously, KD the Kai wants to try and get past Koulos as soon as he can, obviously just to create a little bit more of a comfortable gap between himself and Kirk.
Yeah, I think you're right. Koulos is actually on soft, fresher tyres than Kai's older mediums. But obviously Kai in P1 is going to be doing the Sebastian Vettel and shouting blue flags, or Koulos, just get out of my way. But he's not really up with Koulos at the moment, so it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
We've had a little bit of an off from Pedro here. Maybe potentially outbroke himself. I wasn't on board with him at the time, but joined him out of turn 1 in a little bit of sand. So yeah, loses himself a little bit of time to Kirk, and potentially, you know, Sophie, you know, gaining a little bit of time on Pedro there.
Yeah, and battle for P5 isn't over yet. Deadline coming back in. He doesn't know when to give up. He really never does. Like older tyres and damage, Deadline he's quick enough to push through that. So, but what we will see coming into turn 1, spirit. It's racing spirit. Gotta love it.
Yeah, you gotta love it. You know, he's not giving up even with that little bit of damage, which is good to see. As we see, oh, that was very close. I think Midbound had a little bit of brown trouser moment there, seeing a very fast Mercedes braking very late and nearly touching his rear bumper. But the two boys here keeping it clean so far. But yeah, like you say, Deadline not wanting to give up just yet, and we've got 7-ish laps to go for some drivers, and KD the Kai and Kirk coming in for a pit stop, a very late pit stop. But what tyres will they go on? Will they go on softs? Will they go on, you know, mediums again? We shall see. But Pedro here will probably be thinking, oh, I wasn't expecting these guys to pit here. So let's see what Pedro can do now.
Yeah, Pedro, he's unfortunately not got enough fuel to go to the end. Otherwise he'd be looking maybe even pretty for P2. But yeah, Kai has gone to soft tyres, and I can only imagine Kirk can do the same with those amount of laps to go. So yeah, the final pit stops for these top 3 imminent. I think Pedro will push another lap or 2 before he goes to soft tyres, because that AMG is not quite as good on tyres as the M6. So, but Kai, we know he's got a lot of skill. He'll be able to push through a little bit. But as we can see, Kirk, yeah, he's out in P2, and with his final stop done, Pedro coming round turn 1 with another stop to go. So it's between, I think, Pedro and Sophie for that battle for P3, as Deadline's still not giving up for that battle for P5.
No, he's definitely not indeed. Obviously, skipping the chicane a little bit there, but you know, not causing himself a time penalty, which is good to see. But yeah, this battle for P5 definitely not over yet. I think this will be one that will be brewing right until the end. Probably a few corners to go, unless anything, you know, happens. But slightly further behind, we have Joker having a nice little race here, just keeping himself to himself and trying to get a decent result. And same with Koulios. He's obviously with that pit stop of Kai, he's now in a little bit of free space and doesn't have any blue flags waving in his face. But someone that does have blue flags, myself, but Haslett as well. He's had a very tricky race in this Porsche, but doing a phenomenal job so far. And again with Bertie, again having a difficult race, but having a very good race.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Kirk looks like he's trying to get past our very own Sarah Hawkey. So Kirk with the blue flags, and he's going to be wanting past down the back straight. But blue flags don't...
The problem is, yeah, I didn't want to let Smelly Kirk through. So.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. I do not blame you at all. But he's made it work. Oh, contact! Oh, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate.
No comment, Your Honour.
One for the stewards. I mean, is that down? Pedro sneaks up into P2, at least temporarily. But is that one where Kirk has outbraked himself, misjudged it, or has It's our very own Sarah Hawkey misjudged it. That is one for the stewards and one that they'll get back to us on that one post-race. But Pedro stealing P2 for the meantime. But maybe you can say that as a bit of karma for earlier moves in the season. Because those that remember Daytona Oval, there was a slight incident with Sarah leading and Kirk being lapped and causing a victory loss to Sarah in the blue lobby. So
I'm not sad about that still.
maybe a little bit of retaliation. Maybe just a little bit. But
no comment, Your Honour.
Good choice. But it does look like Kirk is still on for what I would feel would be a P2 once this all shakes out. Pedro's still to pit. Sophie's still to pit either side of Kirk at the moment. And just further back, well, we do have P5, P6 who have made their final stops. So Pedro, he's going to have to get a move on because he's going to be challenged, I think, for P4. Depending on how much fuel he's going to have to take on, which is going to be, now I think about it, quite minimal. There's only a handful of laps left to go.
Yeah, and obviously it's unfortunate that Pedro does have to come in for a pit stop, because if he didn't, he'd be able to, secure this P2 and get it kind of over and done with. But like you say, Kirk not willing to give that P2 up very easily. He's on the back of Pedro here, and if Pedro does have to come in and pit, that will give Kirk back up into P2 without any issues. But yeah, further behind, there's a little bit more of a gap between midnight and deadline now. I think that damage and the soft tyres of deadline, they are causing him a little bit of a nuisance and a little bit harder in these final few stages of the race. So that lets midnight have a little bit of breathing room here, and we'll try his best to go and catch Sophie. But that is a little bit of a challenge. She's a few corners ahead now, but. Slightly in front we have Kirk and Pedro. Pedro going around again, so not wanting to pit just yet, not wanting to give up on this P2 fight just yet.
If I can posit a hypothesis for you, that I think the one hole in, say, Pedro's luck and strategy is maybe not being aggressive enough. There's only 4 or 5 laps on. I would have been on those soft tyres as he falls back behind Kirk. I would have been on those soft tyres a lap or 2 ago, just to utilise soft tyres, because if you pit with only 3 laps to go, you're never going to get the full usage out of the softs rather than running around on mediums. But maybe that's something for him to look at for Season 4, being a little bit more aggressive on the strategy, but within reason. We've seen it pay off for him time and time again. I'm not going to say on a conservative strategy, but an appropriate strategy. But sometimes you do need to absolutely call one from out of blue yonder, and as you can see, he's trying to keep with Kirk and running very wide as Kirk now is passing Sarah again under the blue flags and gets it done this time down into the hairpin. Maybe a little bit of a nudge there from Kirk, but and now you're going to see Pedro getting the blue flags. But yes, to finish my point, I think Pedro perhaps needs to be a little bit more aggressive on the odd strategy, like an occasion like this. But other than that, beautiful driving so far today, particularly here in mixed conditions, which he's made the strategy work, despite maybe not even being on the correct strategy. So great driving from the Portugueseman amongst the sea of Brit drivers today.
Yeah, I feel bad for Pedro here. He's in the sea of British drivers, and we all know how British drivers can be. They can be a little bit aggressive and a little bit annoying, especially myself. Cause getting in his way a little bit here in the chicane. But yeah, obviously that fuel light is flashing in that Mercedes of Pedro, so I'm assuming that he's coming into the pits now. No, he's going to go around again. Very interesting. Obviously that's one less lap of the soft tyres available for Pedro, so I'm wondering, is Pedro going to try and chance his arm? And even though that fuel light is flashing, is he on fuel mix 6? Is he going to try his best to get to the end? Not sure if it's possible, but we might see Pedro try that. But yeah, I think he's caught out. He's been a little bit unlucky in this race here, especially with that opening stint where it was not wet, not dry, but in the middle. Obviously going on those intermediate tyres, it did lose him a little bit of pace, did obviously promote him, well, did drop him back to about P7, P8 for quite a lot of the race. So yeah, unfortunate. Obviously that first starting tyre maybe wasn't the right tyre choice for Pedro when you think about it in hindsight, but he's managed to make a good race out of it so far. And obviously we've got 3 laps to go, and yeah, I don't know if that fuel is getting less and less. So surely he's going to have to pit this lap.
definitely requires some more fuel. I am wondering, with the mist rolling back in, maybe he's waiting. Maybe, do you know what, maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe he's playing the long game, wondering if he's going to get to any potential wet weather and just flick straight to the intermediates, which is what he's playing at. So maybe his non-aggressive strategy is actually a very carefully thought out one, and paying attention to the surrounding weather and circumstances.
Because it has got very menacing into turn 1 with Katie the Kai here. It does look like it's going to pour down with rain in the final few laps. Don't know if it will, or if it's just, you know, like you say, the mist rolling in, making it a little bit dark and gloomy. But we shall see as Pedro is going through that final chicane. Will he come into the pits? Will he go around again? I'm not sure if he can go around again, as it looks like he's got no
Surely
fuel.
got a pit. Yeah.
Yeah, he's into the pits
Now,
now.
yeah. Now it's a question of tyres. Surely it's going to have to be softs.
Yeah, unless he spotted something on the radar, but we shall see. But yeah, obviously that gives Kirk a little bit of breathing room, and we see Sophie coming around that final corner. So will Sophie be promoted into P3 with Pedro having to pit here with 1% fuel?
Yeah, and it's going to be a very, very fast pit stop for Pedro. He's only going to take on 3 laps of fuel, and he's going to be on Sophie very, very quickly, I feel, because he's got to be on soft tyres, so it's going to be a splash and dash of fuel, and then off again.
As we see Midnight coming round the final corner here. Pedro's still in the pits. The border's come up. He's coming out of the pits now. Pedro and Midnight's going over the start-finish line now. Oh, Pedro gets a... Oh, will that be a 3-second penalty for Pedro?
It was.
Yes, he did go over. And I don't know if he got caught out a little bit by Haslett there as he come out of the pits, but will that bring Midnight into a little bit of a fight for P4? Pedro picking up that 3-second penalty. Not what he wants in this closing stage of the race.
No, but he's going to be extremely fast, so I think he's secured P4 at the moment, but he's going to have to try and chase down Sophie. I think she's too far away. I think he's left the soft tyres too long. It's unfortunate, but maybe he saw something on the weather radar that was heading our way that didn't happen. So it's one of those, you can watch the radar as much as you want. Sometimes you've got to play the conditions which are in front of you.
Yeah, these conditions have been very hard to predict, and obviously not in Pedro's favour today, but hopefully, you know, round 10 it'll be playing a little bit more into his favour here. But yeah, very unpredictable and very challenging conditions around the Nurburgring today. It's like I say, typical British weather: showering, then fine, then showering, and then nothing, and typical GT physics, as we say. But Pedro obviously coming round into that penalty zone. He's going to lose himself a little bit of time here. Like you say, I don't know if Sophie's just that little bit too far ahead now. She's going through the chicane, and she'll be obviously entering lap number 32, where Pedro's just coming over into the chicane now after spending that penalty, letting Sabre Venom Haslett through, but obviously Sabre will have to let Pedro back through under blue flag conditions.
Developing battle, Sarah. P6, Deadline's tyres. They have gone off. He's pushed those soft tyres too far. He's now on the rims, and he has Joker on the back of him on much fresher medium, so I can only feel that is going to be an easy pass for Joker coming into a right hand. As you see, he can't turn the car, so he cannot turn right. It's not going to be too far below before the front left has gone as well, and coming down the straight, Joker must be going 3, 4, 5 seconds a lap faster at this point. Deadline a 2-minute 4.1 on the last lap. Yes, and Joker a 2-minute flat, so 4 seconds a lap. So
I can tell you what Joker was doing there on that start-finish straight. He's like, "Come on, Ferrari, come on, come on, go a little bit faster." But he manages to get that move done on Deadline on lap 32. I think Deadline again has been very unlucky with the tyre wear, the damage, because obviously he had a phenomenal start to the race. But after picking up that damage, it's just it's burned through those, you know, those tyres even quicker, and unfortunately in this closing stage of the race it's just not been in his favour, but still doing a pretty good job, as we see Koulias going on to the final lap now.
Called it. I told you his tyres wouldn't last.
But yeah, you were right there, as we see Midnight having a little bit of breathing room. I'm not sure if Joker will be able to catch him, but going up to the first 4, we've got Pedro Then we've got Sophie, Kirk, and then Kai. These four seem to be quite spaced out on the track at the minute, so I feel this is going to be how the race ends, and that's going to do, you know, Katie the Kai a lot of favours in that championship battle.
Yeah, and he's going to come away with a double victory this race, this event rather. So, and I know he has the fastest lap here in the feature at the moment. That said, there's some drivers out there on soft tyres which might be able to squeak a fast lap in, but the likes of Kudos is going to have to get around and set that very, very quickly. But it does look like Kai, he might even get away with a Grand Slam today.
Potentially. That'll be one for us to look at afterwards. But yeah, Katie the Kai being on form today. It might be, you know, just one of his favourite tracks. He's able to, you know, just kind of do what he needs to do around the Nurburgring. But yeah, very unfortunate for, say, like the likes of Pedro having that kind of a little bit more of a challenging race. It does make his job harder going into round 10. But, you know, it's still to play for between Pedro and Katie the Kai in that championship battle. And we'll see in round 10 who comes out on top. Obviously, it does make Pedro's job a lot harder. But we are joined with Katie the Kai going over the start-finish line to claim that P1 victory.
Yeah, he's going to be very happy about it. He's been, I'm not going to use the term dominant in this one because he's had a few issues here and there, but he has been exceptionally good. So he's been absolutely brilliant through this race. And Kirk, coming home, what looks like it's going to be P2, just going to keep it on the road at this point. He's had an interesting race as well in that BAR inspired Vomit Comet of a livery. So he's done very, very well as well, and again, he's on a good run, rich run of form at the moment. So what can we say? It's been a great drive, particularly from Kai and from Kirk, I feel, today. Particularly even after her first lap spin, where he was down to plumb last.
Yeah, what was it? A last to first, last to second for Kirk here. So he's done a phenomenal job to get back up. Oh, as we see a little bit of a kind of a mishap between Sophie and myself. I'm not sure if potentially a little bit of a glitch from Sophie there that maybe caught me off guard. As we see Sophie with that glitching around the final few corners, but claiming P3. I think she'll be very happy with that indeed, especially after, you know, the likes of the first couple of corners and the first few laps. I think she'll be very happy with that. As we see Pedro coming across in P4, then Midnight just going around the final corner here. And again, Midnight's had a pretty good race, quite a few battles here, there and everywhere, but claiming himself a P5.
Yeah, not bad, considering I was last in the first lap and pitted twice by lap 4. So, very happy with the outcome of that one. Joker taking P6 with another solid performance from him. Always seems to get home in top 6, so well done to him. And I want to say Deadline, big shout out to him particularly for the first half of the race, but it looks like the strategic calls that he chose really hampered him from halfway onwards, going to those inters when it was a drying track, because he almost was, in fact, lapped by Katie the Kai by the end there, despite running P2 for the opening, P2, P3 for the opening half of the race, and then by Koulios in P8, Sarah Hawkey in P9, and then Haslett, Saber Venom, and then Bertie, and then Stephen, who obviously did not finish in this one, but great driving from a lot of the drivers today in exceptionally tricky circumstances. So what can we say other than well done to all the drivers, and a good haul of points to all of the drivers in our mixed purple lobby today.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Very difficult conditions, but a good mix of, you know, people driving really well and kind of adapting to those conditions really quickly, which was good to see. And obviously it wasn't easy. It caused a little bit of a challenge for quite a few of the drivers, but yeah, I think a big haul of points for quite a few of the drivers there, especially those championship leaders. You know, keeps the battle alive going into the final round of the championship, and excited to see who comes out on top. But we've got to give it to, you know, Katie the Kai being very dominant around the Nurburgring. It's not the first time we've seen it, but to do it again, it's you know, just a testament to how good he is around this track. So yeah, well done to him. Well done to Kirk and everyone else as well. Yeah, a really good result, which was good to see. But yeah, enjoyed that one, and excited to see how the drivers get on at the Dragon Trail Gardens. Obviously, again, it might be a little bit more wet this time round, so it'll be interesting to see how the drivers get on round then.
Yeah, quite right. I have to pull you back to this race before we go on to Dragon Trail. I think we do need to discuss driver of the day.
Ooh.
I think it's a tricky one because, again, it's being a purple lobby, it's a mixed set of abilities and it's a mixed set of conditions, so it makes it very difficult to judge. But honestly, I'm going to say from my point of view straight off the bat, I think Kirk is in with a shout of it, but Kai, I think he has judged the conditions perfectly, and on that alone he deserves a medal. So obviously not completely faultless in this one, given the conditions. I mean, there was a spin, I think possibly all drivers today, so we're going to have to give everyone a pass on that one, but I'm genuinely thinking Kai for driver of the day, because he has been supreme. And I do want to give a shout out to, again, Kirk, and Sophie has had a great race as well. If again, some interesting strategic calls, and also another shout to Pedro for getting round. But the only thing I think that's let him down is that strategy today, but otherwise great pace and great driving.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think I'm going to agree with Katie the Kai by a very honourable shout to Kirk as well. So my driver of the day would be Kirk and Katie the Kai.
I'd be happy to go with that, because both of them have had great races. Kirk going on the wrong tyre for the opening stint and then made it work when the track dried out, so I'll be happy to go for the pair of them as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick, but I think not to mention all the other drivers as well. If we could give driver of the day to all of them, I would.
That would be quite nice. But looking forward, Sarah, I do think we're in that point where the championship is between 3 drivers, and it's going to be whoever comes out on top in the race is going to take the title for the Season 3 F1 RST Championship. So, Dragon Trail Gardens, and it's forecast to be another wet race. It's going to be a tricky one. I think it's I think it might even be worse than Nurburgring in terms of the wet weather, but this one has been a largely intermediate to dry affair, with lots of little showers, but yeah, the forecast for Dragon Trail is monsoon for some of it, so it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, I think that's one way to put it. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be difficult if it does really pour down with rain, but that'll be, that'll be where we see how the drivers adapt to those really, bad conditions or changeable conditions again. And like I say, if it rains just a little bit more, Dragon Trail Gardens is one of those tracks where it's very twisty-turny. It's very hard to put the power down, so it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers kind of adapt to that, and pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be... Yeah, I'm going to stick with entertaining. I'm going to stick with that for it. But
it's a good way to put it.
But for now, I think we need to put a wrap on this event. I'm going to give it a good solid... Oh, I'm going to give it a solid sort of 3.5, 4 out of 5. It was a good entertaining race. Lots of mid-pack action. And Kai just keeping his nose clean for most of it, and just keeping a good distance to the chasing pack. So, well done to all the drivers.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Let's bring on Dragon Trail, and with that, I think we should listen to some of their post-race interviews.
Let's do it.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for being there on comms with me today, and I'm going to say thank you for everyone for watching. If you've liked it, please feel free to leave us a like, a comment, or a subscribe on YouTube, or check out Instagram and TikTok and our other media. Check the links, and otherwise we'll see you in the next round. And then after that, we'll be taking a little bit of a break before Season 4, but we will have some other action coming with either a winter series or some more mini-series. So with that in mind, we'll be back for Dragon Trail, and then we'll go on a slight hiatus for a few months. But first, we've got that awesome finale at Dragon Trail Gardens to come.
Midnight's pick of the week.
Not too shabby for a late entrant, wasn't expecting to come away with a podium after having to start from the back, and some spicy racing towards the end. Almost ended my charge towards the point end early, the Ferrari worked well, so let's see how the remaining race go.
It was a very interesting race with the differing weather conditions. If it could be like that the whole season, I would have scored much better, I think. I'm happy with third even with my 2 mistakes with being on the wrong tires at the wrong time, but it was something to learn from. See you all at the final round.
Well, that was a fun afternoon of racing at the Nurburgring, but what can I say? I'm going to start with the feature sort of backwards. It didn't go quite to plan for me. No matter what the weather did, I always seemed to be on the wrong tyres at the wrong time. Started on the intermediates, which seemed like a great idea at the time, and then it was bone dry by the end of, I think, lap 2. So I pitted for some dry tyres, and then it rained again. So I pitted twice by the end of lap 4. So to come back and finish P5 after a fairly uneventful race after that, it was just a matter of just getting round and trying to score the maximum amount of points, keep the championship alive. Even I knew Kai and Pedro were up towards the front scoring big points, so that was a matter of just trying to do the best I can. But for me, I'll forever remember that sprint, the dicing with Sophie and with Kai. It was just absolute fun all the way through. Me and Sophie both went for soft tyre, took a bit of a gamble, which really paid off in the opening stages. Managed to get through the field and make use of them, but the problem is Kai's so damn fast, and towards the end he had those medium tyres on, and he just had so much more pace in the car, and he just had to wait for our tyres to become a little bit more tricky, and by the time he caught up to me, had nothing left to fight him with. So well done to Kai, and he measured that beautifully in both races, so well done to him, and well to the rest of the field as well, because that was a very tricky set of races. On to Dragon Trail Gardens.
First of all, I want to say congratulations to KD Kai in the feature race. He was completely uncatchable today, and P4, I guess for me, P4 in the sprint, second in the feature race. On paper, it seems like a fantastic result for me. Again, after obviously combined lobbies, so we got a bunch of fast drivers such as obviously KD Kai, Midnight Pedro, Joker, Sophia, all drivers I probably wouldn't expect him to be competing with for a second week in a row. I think on paper the result flattered me a bit. Maybe not the sprint race. I think sprint race, it was on merit. That P4 was probably more on merit than anything else. Although I think that last lap at the sprint race was very hectic. Obviously, that the battle between Joker and Sophie for a third place really could have gone to any one of us three on the final lap. It definitely seemed, from my perspective, it seemed like Sophie was really struggling with the tyres, especially with that slight contact towards around that midpoint of the lap. Obviously, unfortunately, causing Sophie to spin. Obviously, you never like to see it happen, but that's just racing at the end of the day. I think she might have just outbroke herself just ever so slightly and just tapped the side of me, and the momentum just carried her around. Very, very harsh part of the contact model to result in that. But in the feature race, I think I probably could have been up there with Kai. It was a very sloppy race. It's feature race P2, but yeah, I think it was sloppy. I think I ended up having 3 or 4 spins. So that explains probably a good 25 seconds behind Kai. I think me and Kai probably nailed this. Both of us nailed the strategy during the race. Very happy with the result. Although I think, for my own personal opinion, it was a sloppy feature race for me. Too many spins in that. But I'll take a P2, and I certainly take ring on the final round at Dragon Trail Gardens, and hopefully I can fight for P5 in the championship, which is obviously not something I thought I'd be saying at the start of the season. Congratulations to everyone. It was a very tricky round, this round at Nurburgring, but bring on the Gardens.
Drivers of the day: Kaditha Kai, Kirk Stancer. Next round, round 10's finale at Dragon Trail Gardens.